Men, your kid may be on the spectrum and you're not quite sure what to do. If you're a father like me and have questions, maybe you're a puzzled dad too. Welcome to the Puzzled Dads Podcast, where we're cracking the code of autism, one piece at a time. Welcome to the Puzzled Dads Podcast. I am your host, Jamar Whitehurst, and I am back again. Glad to be with you all for another episode of Puzzled Dads. Well, you know how we start this episode. We start the same way. So we'll open up in a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. Thank you for this opportunity just to come and talk and connect as dads with children with autism. We pray that you guide the conversation, that you just open the door for wherever you want it to go. As we just share stories, we share experiences, we talk about our kids, and we just thank you for all that you're doing. In your son Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Well, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Puzzle Dads Podcast. Again, I am your host, Jamar Whitehurst, and you can reach out to us, puzzledads@gmail.com. The handle on social media is @puzzledads. Catch us on YouTube for new episodes, like, subscribe, so that you can get a notification when these new episodes come out. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio for my audio listeners. So, but again, just join us, reach out. It's amazing to hear back from you all, from the impact this has had on your lives. And again, just hoping, especially for the dads out there, that this is opening the conversation around having a child with autism and knowing that you're not alone and we're all in this together. Well, as always, we do a definition of the day. And today's definition is education. All right, Jamar, well, we've heard education. We know when we go to school, what is education? All right, well, the definition, the Merriam-Webster definition of education is the action or process of teaching or of being and becoming educated. The knowledge and development resulting from the process of learning or being taught. The field of study that deals mainly with methods of teaching and learning in schools. So with that being said, the title of this episode is Moving to the Next Level. And as we know, going through education, going through school, we're always trying to move to that next level. Disclaimer, I am not an expert on autism, but I am an expert on my son. So what that means is we may have different experiences, different situations, but I can't speak to every situation, but I can speak to my situation and the situation with my son. So that is my disclaimer. I'm not an expert, but I'm always learning and growing. Well, with that being said, I got another special guest, Mr. DeAndrae Hinton. He currently lives in Houston, Texas. He is an author of a book, My Favorite Mistakes, which we'll jump into here in this episode. Lessons I've learned through accountability. And he is professor at St. Thomas University in Houston, Texas, as well as a middle school a teacher in grade school, right? And we'll get into that. And then he's also on the executive board of Autism Dads Social Club, which we had one of the founders in a previous episode. So I'm excited to welcome our guest, Mr. DeAndrae Hinton. How's it going, DeAndrae?
Thank you, man. It's going good. How you doing, man?
Doing pretty good. Man, it was a pleasure to get to know you ahead of time and as we prepared for this and just kind of hearing your story. So why don't you just tell the people a little bit about yourself, some of the details I mentioned we'll dive into, but just tell them a little about yourself.
All right, cool. So like you said, I'm first a father of a 18-year-old who's on a spectrum. His name is Dillon. He moved with me when he was in about 7th grade. And so, ever since then, it's just, it's been me and him. I went from a supportive parent to primary parent. So, and it was a smooth transition. And definitely had its trials, as we, got to know each other, got to live with each other as a teenager and man. So versus when he was very little, it was just his baby. So it's a different ball game when they, finally get their own personalities and but overall, I loved every bit of it. I loved every bit of the experience. Just like that, kind of sums up, the book that I did publish, and where I pretty much put our experiences in writing. And it's not, every single thing that happened as he moved in with me, but I definitely touched on some things that I learned some lessons from. But and even through advocating for autism, me attending an event in which we were fundraising at this gala was where I ran into someone who worked at the University of St. Thomas. Gave them a copy of my book, and long story short, that led me to the adjunct professor position I hold now. So, like I said, that's also what I've been doing. As an adjunct professor, I teach at the University of St. Thomas, and the program that we teach, and it's called the Pragmatic Studies program. And that program actually services adults that are, neurodivergent. And so a lot of my students, were had IEP in school. So, a part of my pride in doing that is the ability to tell parents that there's something else after high school. I'm here. I'm working in it now. So yeah, man, that's that, like I said, with the published author, adjunct professor. I do. I'm working in a middle school. I'm in a self-contained special education class, and I am on the executive committee of the Autism Dad Social Club. So that's definitely been a fun time for me.
Well, I appreciate that, man. You have a lot that I'm excited to get into. I want to start with the process of writing the book, and kind of after, I've told people when I first started doing these podcasts, I started telling stories and telling about experiences I just really never delve into. Just I could tell that at surface level,
Hmm.
but it was kind of lethargic to really open up and get that out. So, what was the process of writing the book, and kind of writing down your experiences, and what was one of some of the biggest takeaways after you finished?
For me, the writing part definitely wasn't difficult because that's something that I kind of always did on my own. I guess as a hobby, or I guess as a way to just like an own form of therapy, right? Like just let things out. So that's kind of what I chose to do for a while. And so when he moved in with me, I just decided to start, writing again. Just start, writing down about certain situations as they happen, or write down, record, certain situations that happen, in the past that I was able to learn from those particular lessons. But kind of just started off as just writing, and then sharing those experiences with other parents of kids with autism, and either siblings of kids with autism, any caretaker, right? Like, so I had a few of those that I was in contact with, and I just started to share certain things. And after about my third email of them, about this situation, they're like, you know what, you need to write a book. So I kind of really compiled all of those situations together, like I said. And uh, editing definitely was, the most strenuous part of the book, because I did it myself. But it wasn't as difficult as I thought, as far as the publication process. Um, And I guess the biggest takeaway is some advice that I got from someone that I had review, and they were like, "You need to wait until after you are finished with your book to give it a title." you never know where your thoughts are going to go as you go through this book, as you rearrange certain things, as you finally edit it, then give the book a title. And so that was something that I, really just took away from that whole process. Is that it's a piece of advice.
That's good. Yeah, you know, um, I've heard preachers say the same thing, where
Mm,
um, you don't give your sermon a title until the end, just because of the process of developing the sermon. And so I've heard them say, you work on the body, then you give it open and close, then you give it a title. So no, that's good. Um, so tell us more about Dylan. Tell us more about who he is as a young man. His journey. Give us a little background about him.
Okay. So yeah, Dylan had a interesting journey to start off with. He definitely experienced some difficulties at birth. He was born 3 months premature, so he had a like I said, had a rough start. He had a few surgeries before we were even able to take him home. So I share with dads a lot that my experience with the diagnosis is a little different because I've had kind of at that point I was used to hearing some jarring news about another health update. So it was like by the time he got his diagnosis at 3 years old, I was like, oh okay, well we'll just add to the rest of them. At that point it was one of those. I'm just glad he's still here. Like I was just glad he made it out that hospital because he actually had to stay in the hospital for the 3 months that he would have had it full term. So he definitely, like I said, had a slow start. He had some developmental delays even prior to the diagnosis of autism. But when we did get the diagnosis, we didn't waste any time as far as getting him into therapy and things like that. But I definitely, had, I want to say everything was great, but I definitely took the fun route, right? Like I enjoyed the every part of him that I could possibly enjoy, right? Like I enjoyed when he was 3 years old, he can walk through in a parking lot and tell you every make and model of car he passed up, and just really learning how he learned something, right? Like I said, he one of his biggest health issues was his vision because he had a few surgeries on his eyes. So I'm always wondering to myself, how can he tell each and every make and model? Like it's amazing. Like I wish I could have recorded it, and he definitely would have went viral. But I realized that when he's at home and he's watching TV, I guess he sees these symbols of the car, and then he learns the slogan, and so he associates the car title, the make of the car, through his memory. And so it just became really, really fascinating. And that was what really made me start paying attention more to him in an observation type, just to really like get to know him and the way he learns and the way he navigates life with the disabilities he has. So, um, you know, it hearing about his story and how he started off, you would definitely not tell by the way he is. He definitely will try everything he can. He wants to play every single sport. The definitely due to health issues, we couldn't allow him to play certain sports, but up to him, he can do anything, and I love that about him. I definitely tell people he's the one who's I'm the introverted one. So if me and him was next to each other, I'd probably be the one that you would assume was on the spectrum. Like I'm by myself, I'm quiet. He will work a party. He's social. He loves talking to new people. He will start a conversation with anybody. And there's one thing I just love about him so much is that, he, being around him, you can tell that he just loves life, and he's just a bright, source of energy. Really, like he's always positive, and like I say, he's a joy to be around.
That's good. That's good. I know you shared with me. Share with the people about his kind of educational journey as far as like where he is now and his adaptability. So I think sometimes parents, or especially dads with young children, one thing that I used to think about is, man, what is he going to be like in high school and preparing for college? And what you told me about Dylan and how he's progressed, was really encouraging. So, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about kind of his especially his high school journey.
Oh, absolutely. So, like I said, when he moved in with me, he was in seventh grade, and it was right, during the COVID year, and so due to his health issues that he already had, he we didn't want to risk him going to school for that year, so he stayed home and was during school virtually. Eighth grade, he went to school, and ninth grade is when I was able to start a position at a school that he could also go to because it was um, sixth grade through 12th grade. So he was able to go transfer there for high school. I was able to, work there. And that's where, one, we definitely really got to get to know each other because, I got to see him, in action in class. He was always included in the general population. So, I was definitely able to see how he learns and things in class. And due to him having the visual impairment, even though he can, see pretty good, he would always have that disability due to the number of surgeries that he's had on his eye. And, due to that, he was able to qualify to, I'm sorry, he was accepted into the Texas School for the Blind in Austin. And that was a really great transition. I love the staff there. I love the environment that they set up, how safe it is for these students. It's really warming for a parent to come into that campus and see how things are and how much they care for these students. But we also just and of course in art and in our art meeting, along with his administrator and his visual impairment case manager and LSSP. Everyone came together to make that decision to where we can apply for him to go to school there full time, and so he was able to go to the Texas School for the Blind in Austin for his junior and senior year of high school, and he just graduated last month in May from the Texas School for the Blind. So he's definitely he's had a great experience. He loves it. He loves it so much that he asked to come back for another year for the exit program. And that was actually him in the art advocating for himself. So I was really proud of him, to see that, as a parent, as an autism dad, it's like one thing you definitely want to make sure that you leave, your son or your daughter with is that ability to advocate for themselves.
Yeah. No, that's really good. That's man, like I said, it's encouraging just kind of hearing his journey. And I also, as a dad, it's putting him in an environment that's away from you is also a challenge that you kind of have to face, have to
Oof.
overcome. Is he going to be okay?
Hmm.
He's away. But
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was definitely, I also say this, it was probably more of an adjustment for me than him. He loved it. From day one, he wanted to go full time when he was able to go for a week, in the summertime. And so he wanted to go back. He didn't even want to come back home. For me, I was freaking out, like that was my first time him being away from me. That didn't involve family or his mom. So it was like, yeah, but like I said, once I got there and was able to see how well they take care of the students and see how safe it was and how secure the campus was and the building, definitely it helped, right? It didn't ease everything, but it definitely helped me accepting that reality that at some point you do want uh, you know to see your child be independent and that's one thing that the Texas School for the Blind does advocate for is for students with visual impairments to be more independent and they work on a lot of vocational and life skills while those kids are there on campus. But yeah, it's definitely different being in an empty, quiet home during the week. and versus always being there with him. Going from literally at home and at work, I see him to not at all for a whole week, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, it was definitely a transition for dad.
So he's about to go into year 3. So when do you feel like you did get comfortable and adjusted, you know, to this situation?
I think the summer that he went, that we knew that he was accepted,
Yeah.
that's when he went for maybe 3 weeks. And so, like, I was like, okay, at least they warmed me up for it. But I'm not gonna lie, be honest, man. Like it was kind of like a cool experience, because he had dorms. So
Mhm.
go to his dorm and set up his dorm room up. It was almost like a getting ready for college experience, right? But they I got them every weekend. They had their transportation that brings them back to Houston every weekend, so for home and back to Austin for school. So it wasn't as bad, seeing them every weekend, but
Yeah.
like I said, it definitely helped seeing that it was his choice.
Yeah.
And that's, again, that's what we want. That's what we want. We want them to make their own decisions and to understand their decisions. And I was able to truly enjoy seeing him do that for himself.
That's good. That's really good. Just hearing about his independence is all we can hope for. So so through this journey, since his diagnosis to now, how do you say that you have evolved as a dad?
I will say that it forced me to reflect a lot, because one thing that I had to learn was, one, he's not in the era that I was in growing up. So when I'm looking back at how I was raised and trying to compare it to how I should be raising him, I had to learn that I couldn't even do that at all. Right? Like, one, he wasn't. We're not in the same era. Two, I didn't have autism growing up, so the way that I was raised was completely different than how I had to raise my son. And so, again, it just, again, it forced me to reflect. It forced me to first have to realize where those issues came from, right? Or not necessarily issues, but where my ideals came from. And so, then I had to break down, okay, well, if they came from this and the setting of this, and this is how, things were perceived back in those days, I have to, recalibrate on what's really going on right in front of me. Right? Who is my son? My son is not me, so I can't look at how things were, when I was growing up, or how my parents were raising me. So then I had to just really sit there and think about, because of the fact that I had to understand the autism diagnosis was, is this really right for him? Right? Not, who thinks of how, not who's approving of what I do, what's really effective for him. Because, I think we had that conversation earlier, like the the strength of influence when it comes down to raising a child, but let alone a child on the spectrum, right? So, a lot of times, and I'm like, man, I really got one crack at this, right? Because this is a time for me to handle a situation in which he's going to remember for the rest of his life. So, and then those moments sometimes, made me put a lot more pressure on myself, than I really had, because that's what I was thinking. I'm like, hey man, if I mess up, with him having autism, this is going to really have an impact, because he doesn't forget anything. Like, he will remind me of something that happened when he was 11, at the drop of a dime, and expect me to understand what he's talking about, right? So, as a dad, I'm approaching this like, man, like, if I mess up, it's going to be really bad. But um, again, I have to grow through that too, because putting that pressure on me still kind of takes away the attention from him. And I'm more so looking at, again, how whatever I'm doing makes me look, versus is it really effective for him? Some of the stuff that I did experience growing up was effective, using those same, lessons or tactics with him. But there are certain things that I had to, take away from. And it again, it just forced me to have to do that. And I want to say also, it wasn't even negative experiences. Like, I was able to pull experiences that I had from the classroom, as a teacher, teaching a behavior support class. And most of my students were, black males, unfortunately, but, that's the big population of students that I got, and so I definitely spent a lot of time with students, at my son's age throughout my career. And, there are certain things that I experienced in the classroom or certain experiences that I had with students that, I kind of was able to bring back to my home and raising my son and understanding. And I definitely learned a lot of um, uh, from my son, raising him and able to transition certain things back into the classroom. And I definitely, can say I don't think that I'd be, as successful that I am with students with behavior challenges if it weren't for me having this experience with raising my son, on my own.
That's good. Yeah. Um, just because I was thinking about that, and you kind of spoke to a question I was going to ask of being a dad with a artistic child, and then teaching special education, and just the influence that had and changing perspective. What was the biggest perspective change once you went into that field that you had that you didn't think you'd have before?
I think because knew that my son had a certain perception having autism, that I had to change my perception of my students having behavior issues. And I feel like the fact that I had to be more tolerant of my own child, it allowed me because it's real easy to lose your patience in a behavior support classroom, trust me.
Yeah.
And it's almost like that's what they feed off of, right? Like they want you to lose your patience just so they can say, hey, this is the reason why I am the way I am. And so for me, it was a challenge all the time, right? Like I always, challenged myself to have more patience than that kid had energy, right? So it became easier, when I had to raise my son, is because I had to have more patience with him, understanding that he has autism. And, definitely a part of the reflection, as well as this particular question, it forced me to constantly ask myself, before I get on him, did I teach him this? And we as dads often overlook what we don't teach and what we simply just start to expect. And so, and with raising this a kid with autism, you have to break it down to the basics a lot. So a lot of things that I found myself, having, um, uh, a short patience for, the things that I struggle with developing the patience for. It's like I can't say I've always been as patient as I am, but that's something that helped me is to ask myself, like, okay, I can't truly lose my patience with him if I didn't teach him this. And if I don't remember teaching him this, because he has a greater memory than I do, if I don't remember teaching him this, then I can't, get on him. I can't expect him to learn certain concepts. Yes, certain things are common sense, but again, a neurodivergent world and our world has a different view of common sense. Some of the things that he feels is common sense, I look clueless in. Right, like I said, he can recall a memory vividly from 7 years ago, and so his common sense is it has me looking like a juvenile. But like I said, certain things like that just have made me um, understand, like, okay, yeah, there is a difference between his common sense. So I can't expect him to know certain things. There are certain things I'm going to have to repeat over and over and over until he gets into a rhythm for it, gets into a rule for it, right? So, yeah, like I said, even bringing that to the classroom, right? Like it helped me be more patient with my students because I'm like, we're all at this point expecting these students to behave, but no one has ever taught them what good behavior looks like, and no one's truly understood them, or at least tried to um, understand why they feel misbehaving is where they can be successful at. Is because once you realize that every child just wants to be successful at something, and some of them are successful at misbehaving, and they're very successful at being removed from class, and they're very successful at being sent home. So when you look at the success rate of a kid in a behavior class, they have 100% success rate. So for me, it was how do I change or at least show them that they can have success in a more positive direction? And so, so yeah, man, that also I would say came from me raising him, because in my mind, when I got the diagnosis as well, I was always, how do I find his superpower? Because that's what he's going to need to live in this world. I can't constantly accommodate all of his disabilities, like, or all of his needs, right? And the world is not going to do that. So, in order for me to prepare him, I have to show him where his biggest strengths are and help him with that. So, like I said, it helped me do the same thing in my classes. Like, these students aren't going to change unless you show them a reason why and show them what they're good at besides the mischief. And so it became, a challenge for me, but also something that I enjoyed doing, which was finding out these student strengths so I can highlight it and I can show them, hey, this is actually what you're really good at. If you can focus on that and not on certain things that you think you're successful in, then, you can start seeing things turn into a different direction. And that's where I got a lot of my success from within my students.
So that sounds like a master class right there on, for the dads and even other parents, because I know is we have women that watch this as well. Just go back and really listen and dissect what DeAndre said. Right, we in order for us to have patience, right, before we lose our patience, rather, we need to think: Did I teach my child this? I think, that when you said it just kind of hit me, and I'm starting to think back of times where I might have disciplined my son, or I might have said, "Hey, why are you doing this?" And then trying to think about, well, did I actually teach him not to do this, or how to do it the right way? So, um, no, that is that's a great nugget for people to go back and just kind of think on and process on, and so hopefully next time when you go out there and and your child's doing something that you're trying to figure it out, and maybe it's been a long day, um, think before you lose patience. Keyword before you lose patience. Have I taught them this? So no, I think that was great. What would you say are some of the other challenges you've had with having a child with autism?
Also forgetting that he also, had a vision impairment. And so, like I said, even though he did have some successful surgeries and, has all, corrective lenses and things like that, there's still certain things that he's not going to be able to see. And so a lot of my expectations, for him to even just do simple tasks, I felt myself being impatient, um, not realizing that autism wasn't the only disability that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And so, and then, like I said, not only that, just that whole mentality that, okay, he's with dad now. You can't do nothing wrong. Everything has to be perfect. And like, he's not with mom. So, he's with dad. And now everyone's expectations of that, you can't, you got to do everything right. Um, that like it takes a toll on any man, on any responsibility, especially your own child. Right. So, one of the struggles was that I was able to work through, and which I speak about in my book, and I'm definitely not shy to admit, that I accepted that therapy was something that um, I want to say every parent should experience, and not only that, but um, I can I can say that was one of the biggest things that helped with the transition when he moved in with me. It was that I went through counseling prior to him getting there. Then I was able to set him up with the counselor, and so he had sessions weekly or every other week with his counselor at home, virtually. And then after their sessions was over, had a follow up session with me again. So. That's I can't say that I struggle too much with that, because that was something that I already accepted. That the route that I was going with that, being in special education and advocate for mental health myself, definitely wasn't shy even about approaching therapy about this, because for me, like I said, it was it wasn't just me on the line, right? And now it's my son. So you definitely gotta make sure that you put your own oxygen mask on before assist someone else. So
Yeah.
before I could like I had get, feel in a position that I can help him, I have to help myself, and it definitely helped me as a parent identify those things um, that I was so used to growing up, and not even knowing or realizing some of those things are coming out, right, or coming out in the way you're raising your kid. So, like I said, it was a lot, and it influenced the title of my book tremendously, right? It really was lessons that I learned. And I wasn't able to learn those lessons until I held myself accountable. And when you truly hold yourself accountable is when you can really go back and identify where the source of certain things were. But you really can't do that until you hold yourself accountable, because the entire time you're thinking, you're right. There's no point of going back in my childhood and understanding where I got this from, because in my mind, I'm right for doing it.
Yeah.
So, once you start to hold yourself accountable, it's like, okay, then you can ask, okay, where did that come from? Where did that belief, where did that, behavior, where did that style of raising my son come from? And then you can truly see that. So,
That's that. I mean, that's really good, and just thank you for sharing that experience. And so, just kind of as a side note to the folks watching, make sure you check out DeAndre's book. You will see a QR code on the screen, as well as the link to these episodes, so that you can purchase and read more about his story. And because you know, as you were talking, when we think about like man, what are the mistakes that we've made? What are the things that, I didn't do? But just hearing, you know, you hear a lot about going to counseling for relationships. You don't hear a lot of people talk about going to counseling for parenting, whether it's, having a kid on the spectrum or special needs or just in general. Um, so can you eh, just encourage those folks who have never thought about, man, I'm struggling as a parent, but I have nowhere to go. I have no way to work through this. It's just part of parenting. We always say, well, it's just being a parent. That's just life. We're all dealing with there's no book on how to really be a parent. You're kind of experiencing that as you go. So can you kind of encourage people who have never thought about, oh man, let me go work through some things or figure out what I'm doing wrong as a parent, or at least see where some of these things are coming from?
right. Like, no, the best way I could put it, just like kind of like you were talking about, man, is relationships. And you can't discount or dismiss the fact that parenting is still a relationship. It's a father son relationship. It's a mother son, father daughter, parent to child. It's still a relationship, right? And so when you're thinking about that, the therapy aspect, like you said, is like people think about relationships. Well, I think the issue is they don't consider the relationship between parent and child. And here's why I feel like that. One of the, some of the advice that I give to dads is too, for me, is you really have to get to know that child. And we get too busy getting to know autism, and we get too busy getting to know their disability, but we forget that that's still a person. And so we have to get to know that person as if we got to know any other person too. So, so like I said, when you're considering therapy and things like that, it's like, yeah, you got to realize, yeah, you're going to therapy for the relationship between you and that autistic child. And, it may not affect them in the way that it affects you, but it'll definitely help you identify certain things that you're struggling with as a person that you might not even understood or realize that you're struggling with that. You just see an issue that you can't get over and or get through or get past, right? And so a lot of times that's one of the things that therapy does, is helps you reflect. It helps you understand why you can't even get past that problem. And then you can start truly seeing the solution, to the actual issue. A lot of times I'm in class and I have to ask myself, why does certain behaviors of these students get me more than the other ones? Why? Like, why does this hurt me so much when that kid does this? But oh, if he threw a desk through the window, okay, I'm pretty cool with that. Like, why, is and it's different from certain people, right? I don't mean to be too extreme, but it's
Yeah.
different from certain people. Certain people have a high tolerance for certain behaviors, and then they have a very low tolerance for certain behaviors, and it's in all of us. And so I have to ask myself, man, why is whenever that kid does that, why does it annoy me? Why does it really trigger something in me? And it's like, okay, you really got to do some self-reflection. And that may be a lesson that you need to learn. Right. That may be something that's, that kid might have been sent to you to get on your nerves just so you can identify why it gets on your nerves. And so, like I said, I definitely grew a lot through my students. I grew a lot through my son. But like I said, therapy definitely helps you identify certain things. Like therapy helped me write my book, right? It opened up certain things to me about certain things that I learned. Certain stories I was able to share in therapy, I was able to use in my book too. Just understanding certain behaviors, certain backgrounds, and and I also feel like once you go through therapy and see and open up yourself, you develop a higher tolerance for other people because you start to realize, okay, there's cracks under my surface too, right? I'm not perfect. I might not be on the spectrum, but I'm not perfect. And so if I want people to have that patience and that grace given to me, then I have to do the same thing with my son or my child. So that's one of the biggest ways that I can encourage parents and dads specifically to seek therapy if they are struggling, and sometimes even if they're not struggling, just it helps you understand yourself as a person, and once you do that you can um you know be the best that you can be for your child.
That's good. No, I appreciate you telling people that, telling me that too. Uh, what uh, what are some things that you might have learned about Dylan that you didn't even realize were there? Whether it was now, whether it's when he was young. What are some things you learned about him that you were like, okay, I didn't see that, but
uh he doesn't discriminate. He doesn't see what type of the outer features of a person.
mm,
So, and I don't want to say he doesn't see it, it doesn't matter to him.
yeah,
So he will talk to no matter how old you are, no matter how young you are. No, I don't care what your body type is. I don't care if he has a way of seeing people for who they are. And he may not even realize it. Like I just see him interacting with people, and I'm like, he does not. He'll talk to you the same way he'll talk to your child, or he just sees you as a person, and it it, it was definitely a learning experience to me, especially when we both went through counseling. Like I stated, when he first moved in with me, and his counselor encouraged him to effectively communicate, even if it's to me about me. And so I had to start realizing that, one, kids with autism are already completely brutally honest, no matter what. So when she taught him how to effectively communicate, it was one of those like, all right, I really can't even argue with him because like I'm more than sure he's observed me in ways that I couldn't even comprehend him having autism. So it was like, all right, or if he'll bring something up in the past, or remember you said this, you're probably right. I'm not even gonna argue with you when it comes down to memory, son. So yeah, you're right. Like, um, but um, but yeah, man, that's one of the things that I learned, and definitely something I appreciated about him. It's time that in my mind I'm like at the lowest point, or like then I just suck at this dad thing. And, he's able to see certain things that I can't. Because I have all this pressure on me. He just sees through all of that. So
yeah, that's good. Um, they're they're on it. It's ironic. Their honesty sometimes can be uncomfortable, but yet reassuring because it's not coming from a place of malice. It's not coming from, you know, even a judgment. It's just a question, you
oh
know.
yeah, Oh,
You
I'm
know,
back.
they
I got back in the gym because of my kid. That's just straight up. Like he just said, hey, Dad, you're fat, but all right, like,
yeah,
cool, okay.
yeah,
Back in the
yeah,
gym twice a day. Like I'm be honest, like and like you said, it's brutal, but they also don't understand that it's brutal in their mind. It's just no objection. There's no I intend to make you feel a certain way. It's just an observation, and so
yeah,
it's one of the purest observations. So it's like hey, when an autistic child tells you something, you listen.
yeah. And to your other point, when they bring up something from 7 years ago, they are probably right.
Mhm.
Our son brought something up. Can't remember what it was. This was probably a couple weeks ago, and we're like, "Son, when did that happen?" Well, I was 7, but you're 14 now. Okay, you're probably right. You
Yeah,
are probably right. So, but that's also a joy that they bring to where you know, they're able to recall good memories, bad memories. So to your point, we have to be mindful about the memories we give them. So,
exactly.
um, speaking of memories, what's one of the best stories that like always give you joy when you think of Dylan? Just something that you could think about and just brings a smile to your face.
Um, I guess his effect on people. Um, I remember, like I said, we worked at the same school, and one of the his Spanish teacher, I believe, he had just had to find me, and I'm like, what's going on? Dad kicked in first. So I'm like, hey, is he okay? Like, what's going on? And he just wanted to tell me how grateful he was to have him in class. He said he wasn't feeling too well or something, and Dylan offered. He got up out of his seat and went towards him. He's like, "Hey, do you want me to finish reading this?" And so he finished reading whatever the teacher was reading to the class for them, and I guess it was just that effect that he had on that teacher. It was just so impactful. So it's like for me, anytime I get a chance to see his impact on people, that's what really makes me smile. Like I remember, when he first came with me, he actually had a chance to play for my middle school basketball coach. So it was just like a trip down memory lane that he was still coaching, and I was able to put him on the summer team, for him. So, listening to the same, kids getting yelled at for the same things that we got yelled at back then, it was awesome. But one of the things that occurred when they had a game was that I kind of noticed um, how well he developed relationships with other kids. And that was one of the things that I was always worried about, right? As an autism dad, like I'm constantly worried about the relationships he builds or the effect that he has on other people if they're ever tolerant of him, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And one of the moments that I was really like, okay, yeah, I can clearly see how positively he impact others, as well as how well this particular child was raised too. I can tell from the stands, he's on the bench and his shoes untied. And at that time, just like a lot of other kids with autism, he had an issue tying shoes. And like this is 15 years old, and the fact that he just looked to the side of his team and said, "Hey, can you help me tie my shoe?" And the other kid did it with no hesitation. It was
Yeah.
just like, whether it was they developed that team, camaraderie, or like I said, that kid was just raised, to always lend a helping hand no matter what, not even to bring it up or, kind of highlight the fact. But, just me seeing that from the stands, it was just like, man, that was a really, really, great moment for me, as a dad. So, him helping people, always brings a smile to my face, and him fostering relationships with people in which they will not hesitate to help him with anything he needs. That definitely brings a smile to my face, man. Like, so like any of those memories, of course, I'm a sports dad. So, there's definitely times and even videos, man, that he gets in the basketball game and all the team knows to get him the ball, all right, just to let him get one shot, and he hits the 3 pointer, right, and the whole crowd empties and runs on the court. So like those moments, I definitely enjoy. Like as an athlete myself, I definitely enjoy that. But as a dad, like it's really those impactful moments that you can see like how he impacts other people.
Yeah. No, that's good. Man, it's exciting to see where he's gonna go, and just want to just admire and encourage you, just as a dad and raising him, having a young man. We're going through puberty right now, so I have a couple of talks about that. So you've been through that, but just a
Right.
big part of where he is because of you and the impact that you have. So hopefully you can reflect on that, and it's like, okay, I might have done something right. I might have not been as bad as I thought I
Right.
was going
I
into this.
appreciate that, man. But
You
like I
know,
said, you probably know too. It's rarely that dads would ever get to that
yeah,
point, right? Like maybe I did do something right. Now we're constantly criticizing ourselves and constantly feeling like we should have done something better and things like that. So it is a great feeling sometimes to
yeah.
just hear that, especially from another dad who was going through the same journey, right? Like to kind of get some of that positive feedback, man. I definitely appreciate it.
Yeah. Um, well, just a few more, and then I'll get you
Mhm.
out of here. Can you tell people more about the post education program at St. Thomas? I think um,
Absolutely.
having a child that's just about to start high school and try to understand what is out there, what's next for a college education. We don't hear too many programs like that. So can you tell people more about the program, how it works, and how it supports at this point young
Absolutely.
adults with special needs?
Mhm. Absolutely, man. That's also something that, once I started working, and I shared it with you too when we talked the other day. Like, when I first came about this program, in my mind, it was my son who was on. Like, I was like, he's going to graduate in 2 years. I need, like, I need to start thinking about what's going to happen and where he's going to go. And up until then, I had no idea that this program existed either. Right. And that's up until I started working there. And so it was, like I said, almost an honor, being able to go there on the days that I am there and be able to teach those students because I can tell parents when I have ARDs for my students in middle schools and when I was at the high school that my son was going to down here in Houston. When I did have ARDs or the parents that I still have contact with, I can tell them that, like, hey, there is a next step. A lot of parents didn't or don't plan that for transition for post high school. Because they got so much accommodation support in high school with public school setting that in their minds they're not going to get that anymore anywhere else. So like I said, first and foremost, it's just an honor of being there and being able to teach students that I know have had parents that were in the same position I was and kind of um, um, not too educated on what my options were post high school. But it's a great program because their first and foremost mission is to uh, make sure that these students have the exact same college experience, or at least the quality of college experience. So there at the University of St. Thomas, they have the option of living on campus. They give the parents an option if they wanted to, um, pair them with a student that has a disability or a parent with a student that does not have a disability, to cohab, to dorm with, and it they have access to every part of the campus. It's not like they're secluded in any part of the campus. They have access to, any thing that any other student has access to. Um, the program itself, we teach it at an accommodated pace. I would say that, um, a lot of the students, like I said, they come with IEPs. So part of the process to, being accepted is your most recent FIE or the full evaluation uh, to be reviewed, and so they can determine if they are going to be able to handle the level of rigor that we do offer within these classes. So unfortunately, not everyone, qualifies, but it is an option for parents who didn't think so that they had an option. It was a great feeling, right, to bring my son to one of my courses one day and have him see that there are other students with autism that are in my class and adults with autism that go through our program. They graduate. Some select few are chosen to continue on to their bachelor's program. And so right now, it's currently designed for them to get their associates. But for those who qualify, they do move on to a bachelor's program, and even a more select few go to graduate school. And so again, like just seeing that transition, right, from going from at one point parents not, uh, you know, thinking that this could be possible to actually seeing someone work their way and through graduate school. So that like I said that program is great that we have it, but as a parent, it's something that means a lot more
Yeah.
working there.
Yeah, and for the folks watching, I'll put that link as well in the text box and the description box. But that's just so encouraging again as having a son that's going into high school and trying to figure out next steps. So hopefully you all are as encouraged as I am about knowing that there are programs out there post high school that having our kids may have an opportunity to be a part of. So I appreciate that. Um, uh, Tell the people a little bit more. I know Dr. Chisholm came on and he talked a lot about Autism Dad Social Club. So, as an
Hmm.
executive board member, just give another opportunity to speak more about who you are and what you all are doing right now. I know you have a virtual series going on right now. So, why don't you
Hmm.
tell people a little bit more about
Absolutely. Being at my son's school, that definitely was one of the benefits. Like that's how I got connected with the Autism Dad Social Club. One of the school counselors at his school was sending me some information and resources that I can have as a parent with a child on the spectrum. As then, um, I can share with other families. And so one of those resources was the Autism Dad Social Club. And so, I reached out on Facebook and they responded and went to their meeting and got to know them and a few other dads that joined prior to me. And it was really refreshing, as a dad, right? And it was also great that I was able to be an asset, right? I was able to share my experiences as a special educator and help certain dads navigate through learning the art process and the IEP components. And so that was a blessing, just to trust this group. But when I was approached with the opportunity to serve on the executive committee, it was only right because at that time it wasn't too many dads that had a child that was my son's age. And so, I'm able to share those experiences with dads that are approaching my son's age at the time that I joined, and then even continuing on. And so now at this point, yeah, we have a few more dads with children that are in the early adult age and in the late teenage. But at that time, I was one of the few dads, and it again, it was a great honor and so far has been a great experience being able to serve on this committee. Like I said, I'm more than sure Jonathan was able to share a lot of details about what we do, but what it really means to me is just being able to not only experience but provide that safe space for dads to to come and discuss and meet up, fellowship and hang out and understand that other dads are struggling right next to you. And like you said, when we start off, we're not experts, and no one's experts. I don't care how much experience I have in the classroom, how much education I have behind my title, how much I spent raising my son. I'm still not an expert. Like I'm still learning every single day. Like I said, it it's it's great to see that there's other dads, like I said, in my position, able to receive resources as well as provide, and that also makes it easier for dads to to come around and to experience, seeing dads not only being able to help dads, but also seeing dads receive help, because that's sometimes difficult for us to not only acknowledge that we need help, but to take that next step to even ask for it. So that's definitely been something that uh, bridged that gap a little bit. Like it allowed us to be in certain situations where dads did feel comfortable. Another thing that we do besides meet up with dads on a monthly basis is we have quarterly family events, and those are so, I want to say, precious to those parents and families, because with a lot of children that are on the lower end of the spectrum that require a lot of attention, and you got to watch them very carefully to provide that parent with a few minutes of rest, right? And as an autism dad, I understand. I'm sure you know what I mean by that, right? Like,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
necessarily sleep, but
Yeah.
I can trust that person to be with my kid, and I can turn my back and not, so to give that parent like at least 5 or 6 minutes of that,
Yeah.
is something that it really means a lot to us as dads in this group. We've had parents that came to us at networking events, and it just and in tears, like, let us know how important it was to be able to have that 5 minutes to where they, like, there's always a dad everywhere. So we're like, hey, we're at an outside event where there's, an Easter egg hunt or a playground involved. Oh, we're gonna have a dad posted in every corner, making sure if that kid took off running, that they are safe still. They want to elope and just, get all that stem out of their system and get that burst of energy. Go ahead, let them go, let them run. We're going to make sure that they're safe, that they're okay, and you can go have a soda and a slice of pizza and just truly just sit back and really think about when the last time you've been able to do that. Since you've had that kid. So, and we even have events for siblings of those kids on the spectrum, right? Like, to be able to network and build relationships with other siblings that have to experience, growing up with the brother or sister who's on the spectrum, in the same household. So, like I said, man, being in this group has been a blessing either way. There's times when I've come to a meeting with dads, just having a difficult time with things that occurred, or situations in my personal life. But just being able to comfortably come to another dad, about situations you deal with raising a child on the spectrum, also kind of opens that relationship to come to a dad about other things, and it just kind of forms that brotherhood in itself. We don't necessarily have to forge it or push it. Once you start seeing dads get comfortable with even talking, then they start being comfortable with letting you know what they're dealing with, and trusting that we're going to come up with solutions somehow, some way. Someone works somewhere who knows someone who can help, right? So,
Yeah.
there's all kinds of help that I've gotten from a dad who's just in the group, that didn't have anything to do with our children being on the spectrum, man. So, it's been a blessing for these few years I was able to be in this group.
That's good. That's good. Can you tell the people, just to let y'all have the fatherhood huddle going on right now?
Hmm.
Um,
Okay.
Virtual series have a couple more weeks left. If you
Absolutely.
tell people a little bit about that.
Yeah, so fatherhood huddle is something that our founder, Dr. Chisholm, had came up with. I remember talking to him about it and how he wanted to start this. And the first series, we actually were the speakers for that. And for, like I said, anybody knows me, I'm introverted. I don't like to speak, but I always count on Dr. Chisholm to force me to be in a situation where I have to speak, and I definitely appreciate him for that because it made speaking at engagements a little bit easier when every time he throw me in the fire. It's like, nah, you gonna talk about this. And so we put together this fatherhood huddle, with the hopes that dads can log on through Zoom, able even if you're moving around, even if you have a job in which you could just have it playing in the background, just simply having a safe space for dads to log on and hear some good resources, hear from other dads. When we first did it, it was other dads on the without raising kids on the spectrum. Each one of us was in the Autism Dads social club, but this time around we got a pastor, we got other, psychologists or counselors to speak. And so I think next week we have an attorney coming to speak. So it's like we're branching out to different resources that dads may need as they go along through this journey. Not necessarily to just hear from other dads and their experiences, but truly tangible things that they can take away and say, no, okay, yeah, this is a resource that I can walk away from. But yeah, our past just past episode that we now have out on YouTube on our Autism Dad Social Club YouTube channel. We had a chance to speak with a pastor, and he was able to share with dads from a theological standpoint on what we should feel raising a child on the spectrum. Like he talked to us about um, you know uh, the expectations that we put up on ourselves when we comparing other children, especially within the church, or when we're getting advice from people who have no experience raising kids on the spectrum, and they want to give you that advice on what you need to do. And he definitely touched on that. And one of the things that I walked away from was his quote. You know, Never allow don't accept criticism from anyone you would not accept advice from, or
Mm.
anyone you would not seek advice from, right? So it's like, you know, like I said, everyone's going to have an opinion, have something to say, but there's not a lot of people that have been in your shoes to be able to understand what you may be going through. Right? There's not a lot of people that see that meltdown at the grocery store or at a restaurant that can truly relate. So when you're worried about, what someone might think, or the method you may use to deal with, certain challenging behaviors and struggles from raising a child on the spectrum, you don't have to worry about that because like I said, you wouldn't take advice from that person that's criticizing what's going on in that moment. So never accept that criticism. And so again, that's definitely a message that I'm a walk away from. So definitely take time to shout out Reverend Dr. Garland Thompson for that.
That's good. Um, no, I
But
appreciate
yeah,
that.
we do have. I'm sorry, we have, and I'm definitely send you the links for the Fatherhood Huddle if you don't already have it. But they occur every Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Our first round of episodes we did, it was a Saturday at 11:30, so we kind of switched it up a little bit, and so for more dads to be able to attend in the evening, because sometimes on that Saturday is the time that they have away from work to spend time with that child and their family. So we tried to make it convenient for other dads who was available during the week, on Thursday, in the evening time. So we have them every Thursday. Like I said, we have about 2 more episodes in this series. We try to get them out on YouTube as quickly as possible. So we can get any type of information to you guys as it is given to us. So I definitely encourage everybody to follow the link, register, so you can get the Zoom link for our meeting on Thursday. Yeah, I believe the Thursday of the July 9th. So that'll be our next episode, and I look forward to seeing more dads logging on to getting a lot of this really great information.
I appreciate that. And for everybody out there, the links will be um, in the description, QR code on the screen, all the good stuff for you to be able to check that out. Or if you just want to go back and look at the previous series and the previous episodes in this latest series, so that you can just see what are the conversations. Again, I think one of the biggest things me and Jonathan connected on is we have the same kind of vision, and from a standpoint of what are we doing this for, right? Um, to allow dads and other men to understand their support. We all we all have a challenge with trying to talk through these things, but wanting other men to realize you're not in this by yourself. And I think that's what's really been great about me connecting with you all, and meeting with your executive board, and just meeting you all has just been a blessing to me, because it's like, okay, I'm not out here doing this podcast with this. Hey, I want this to be a safe space for dads. There are other people, other organizations that have the same type of, um, kind of fire and passion to open up the conversation and make sure other men are being supported. So, more to come. Nothing to tell right now, but all I'm gonna tell people is more to come with Puzzle Dads and Autism Dads Social Club. So, all right, I'm gonna get you out here on this. Just give, you know, other dads, other parents, just you've given us a ton of nuggets. So, ask you for one lasting nugget for the people as we depart. Just giving them to end this episode.
All right. And I think I'll just double back on the importance of getting to know your child outside of the disability. I think it's really, really important to develop that relationship, with your kid. And I know, a lot of us are hesitant to do that because we feel like if that happens, we kind of lose the authoritative position that we are supposed to have as parents. But I think it's important, especially when your child has autism, that you do get to know that child and you do develop a real relationship with that child as a person. Again, because I think autism kind of changes how you have to approach raising them. And I don't think that there's going to be too many books on your child, right? Like there's going to be books on what the disability that your child has, but there's not going to be too many books on your child. So in order to be able to know which method works, you have to establish that relationship. It's just like in the classroom, in order for me to understand what's going to work for a student, I got to know him. I got to know his parents. I got to know where he came from. I got to know his background, right? A lot of kids are displaced. A lot of kids are growing up in broken homes. A lot of kids are growing up in affluent homes. I've gotten all kinds of kids come through the behavior support classroom. And so I have to approach it in an individual basis because one size does not fit all. It doesn't at all. And especially with autism, right? Like you said, we're not experts. There's nothing that I can say in this interview that's going to fit every single person. And so I encourage everyone to continue learning, not to even look to be an expert, not to look at to be someone who knows it all about your own child. Like continue to learn your own child. That they're going to grow, so therefore that personality is going to change. That person's going to change. They're not going to be the same person that when you got that diagnosis whenever they turn 18. So you got to pay attention to that, and the changes within them as a person versus the developments and autism, and also to just again um, be mindful of the influence that your child has, because whether they're high or on the spectrum or on the lower end of the spectrum, they are still influenced. I tell people all the time, like, just because they're nonverbal, that doesn't mean they're a non a feeling. They're non observant. So they no matter where that child is on the spectrum, they are experiencing whatever environment you put them in. And so at me personally, I definitely try my best to really pay attention to what's influencing them, who's influencing who I'm allowing around him. And, ultimately, I share this with people too. Is like, my goal is to be half the man he thinks I am. Like honestly, like because uh, there's times where as dads, you hear how they think of you, and like, man, you think I'm Superman, like you think I could do everything, right? And so like I tell myself, man, if I could just be half the man he thinks I am, I feel like I got somewhere.
That's good. No, I appreciate it. And you're gonna make me rethink my opening disclaimer. I say I'm an expert on my son.
Right.
To clarify for the people, when I say expert on my son, meaning I know him better than everybody else does.
Oh,
And so
absolutely.
but
Absolutely.
I'm still learning him each and every day. DeAndre, thank you so much for this. This has been a wonderful episode, and hope you all enjoy it out there. Again, Mr. DeAndre Hinton, author, adjunct professor at St. Thomas, middle school teacher, but most importantly, a dad to Dillon. And so I want to thank you again for your time and for joining us today. And I look forward to partnership that we'll have moving forward and opportunities that we have. So, um,
Absolutely.
again, thank you all for joining the Puzzle Dads podcast. Remember, you can reach out to me at puzzledads at gmail.com, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. The handle is at Puzzle Dads. Check out the YouTube link for Puzzle Dads. We'll have the link for the Autism Dads Social Club so you can check out their series. But again, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio for my audio listeners. You can check the podcast out there as well. So thank you again for joining. And remember, Puzzle Dads, we're cracking the code of autism one piece at a time. Have a blessed day. Talk to you all later. I hope you enjoyed listening to the Puzzle Dads podcast with me as your host, Jamar Whitehurst. For more information on autism, check out autismspeaks.org, along with other resources listed on our social media pages. Don't forget to leave a review and follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and subscribe to this podcast on your favorite streaming platforms such as Spotify and Apple Music. Remember, Puzzle Dads, to keep cracking that code because God has a plan for each of us and our children. Have a blessed day.